We are in the second to last week of our Torah section of the Bible. So that means that of the first section of the Bible, which is the first 5 books of the Bible written by Moses, we're going to do this week, which is just parts of Numbers, parts of the book of Numbers. And then next week, we're going to read parts of the book of Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy is 33 chapters. We're not going to get through 33 chapters next week. You really ought to go read the whole thing by yourself. But yes, we're going to read some chapters from Numbers, some chapters from Deuteronomy. And then we close the Torah scroll, theoretically, metaphorically speaking. Okay. Back in ancient Jewish culture, they had really 3 main. They had the Torah, they had the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim. That's the law, the prophets, and the extra writings. And so now we are going to be done with that. That's significant. I've already said this, and most of you are here on a repetitive basis, but I'll just say it again. That's significant because this is the first major section of the Bible that the people of Israel throughout history had and pointed to. So let's say when the prophet Jeremiah and Isaiah are living and writing their parts of the Bible, the part of the Bible that they have is probably the writings of earlier prophets like the prophet Samuel, and then the Torah, and the law. That's what they have. So who's here seeing House of David?
I'm watching it right now.
Oh, you're watching it? Okay. So in scenes when they go into the room full of scrolls, right? And they're copying the scrolls. And you see scribes copying down scrolls and stuff like that. Michal, one of the main characters, the princess, is sort of involved in that in the show. And they're not going to be copying the book of the Psalms because David is right there. The writer of a lot of those Psalms, he's there standing in the room. So what are they copying? They're copying the Torah. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? So again, that's using a show adaptation to describe to you what is real in the history of the Bible, which is we're about to finish a major section, right? And then when we get to the end of the prophets, that will be another major section where it's at some point, the group known as the prophets, they took the writings of Moses and the Torah scroll, and they took a lot of their contemporary writings, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Joel, Ezekiel, Micah, whatever, and they put them together and said, this is all telling the same story. Okay. Does that make sense? And the writings of David, and that would be in the Ketuvim. So does that make sense, guys? Cool. So we're almost done. Congratulations. This is kind of important because, interestingly, in the New Testament era, who knows of the Sadducees? Sadducees? You have the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They're 2 different political groups. The Sadducees only read the Torah, and they didn't believe in any other part of the Bible as being instructive, right? So just an example of why that's sort of significant is you have different parts. Whereas the Pharisees and everyone else, the Essenes and the other political groups and factions at that time, they took all of the writings of the prophets as well. And anyway, does that make sense, guys?
Okay. The Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection.
No, well, because you get most of that in the prophets. Yeah, you get most of the idea of resurrection in the prophets. Yeah.
Can I ask a question that might be ignorant, but I just want to know because I never asked them and nobody else knows.
Go ahead.
At the winery, we're owned by a Jewish. We're owned by Jewish people.
Yeah.
In New York.
Mm-hmm.
So the first grapes that come into our winery every year.
Yeah.
All the rabbis are there, and we got a
guy
named Moses.
Oh, cool.
Actually, in charge of all these.
Does he go by Moshe or Moses?
Well, to us, he says Moses.
Okay, gotcha.
But I'm sure it's Moshe.
Yeah.
But Moses has been doing this for a long time, and he brings this 18, 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Last year. But they bring they walk around with the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Are those
Sadducees? No. No. Every generation, including in Jesus, even if you're not a Sadducee, the Torah is the foundation layer. So that's sort of the main point. You don't really have Sadducees today, but
it's just so strange that there's different groups of
Yeah.
Jewish people. You know?
Well, you do have denominational groups within. You have the ultra orthodox. You have the uh, well, yeah, and that's even ethnic. Yeah, Hasidic and Ashkenazi and all sorts of different things. So
And I
yeah.
have a guy that I work with. He's changed his name, and he is considered a black Israelite.
Oh, yeah, that's a different group. That's a cult. Yeah, that's like that's completely different.
Yeah, because a lot of stuff it's almost like you're kind of being racist to me.
That's a racist cult. They are not Israelite or Jewish at all. Yeah. No, they're not.
Okay, this is something about it.
Yeah, they have if they call themselves a black Hebrew Israelites, they're not really. That doesn't mean that they might not have a Jewish ethnicity. Or maybe any one of us has a little bit of Jewish blood in us. I'm just saying, okay, well, this is an aside. But I'll just tell you the black Hebrew Israelites. So in the when people got really racist, like a few hundred years ago, you had some white folk claiming that they were actually we're the real Israel, right? The black Hebrew Israelites are essentially doing the same thing. They're like, the real Israel is in Africa. Like the real land of Israel. Like that. Oh gosh, it's so annoying. And they're like, God the Father is black. They would say.
Because everybody came from Africa.
Well, God the Father doesn't have a body, so I don't know why they say, I'm like.
So is it best just to stay out of? It says don't get caught up in the back and forth.
Well, you can definitely how be apologetic. By that I mean you can give a defense of the true faith to them if they're willing to engage in conversation with you. Yeah, you can find they really like to do street debates.
Well, so their main thing I caught on is by works.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things. Yeah, especially if you're white, you're going to hell. So, yeah.
Darn.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, everyone is okay unless you're white. Well, it's a very, very new cult. So, yeah, it's like within the last 100 years, I think that they have emerged as a cult.
Really done their genealogy? I mean, I've gone way.
Yeah.
And I've got Nigerian.
Mm-hmm.
I've got European.
Yeah.
I've got East. I've got Japanese. I've got it all. They're all a mix.
Yeah. They
King Richard III.
So I do want to say this though. Most cults and conspiracies and what have you tend to have some sort of little mustard seed of root of truth in them. And that, for the Black Hebrew Israelites, is that there is a Ethiopian offshoot of the Jewish nation, or the ethnic Jewish people. And that goes all the way back to First Kings, theoretically, in the legend. But we can't talk about that today. I'm sorry. No time. No time.
It's just getting down to there's different sorts of.
There are different groups.
Like we're Americans, but some are Democratic Americans, and some are Republican.
Yeah. So within
Southern Baptist and Orthodox.
Yeah. So that denomination, I think of denominations as different states within the Republic of Christianity or something like that. You have Washington State, and then you have Kansas, right? And so. But we're all one, United States. But then you have genuinely outside of the boundaries, you know what I mean? That would claim to be within that, but really they're so foundationally different that you can't really link arms with them in any substantial way, because maybe things look similar on the outside, but really they have a completely different worldview than you, right? And the scripture, the way that they present scripture is completely upside down and backwards and inverted from how you are reading it. So that's sort of, I'll just say Jehovah's Witnesses would be an example of that, right? Jehovah's Witnesses would be an example of that. Mormonism, again, all of these groups that just arose in the last couple 100 years too. So it's interesting.
Is that why they so defensive? The ones that call themselves Israelites?
The Black Hebrew Israelites?
They need to come off really defensive.
They tend to be very they come off very angry. It's militant groups. It's people. It's like gangs. Like people find themselves like that they want belonging, they want family, and they want to sort of channel their rage of growing up. And so that's sort of when you find
It's a lot like that.
groups like that. But yeah, definitely encourage you to like look up some debates with like some wise teachers. To see, because there's all sorts of things, but that's a completely different. All of this is completely off topic from what we're talking about today. That's okay. No, it's not your fault. My main point. I think you brought that up because I brought up the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Yeah. So even going back into Jesus's time, there were sort of different splinters, different factions, right? In their day, it was more like the difference between Democrats and Republicans, or like the left and the right, in the sense that there was a lot of their differences were wrapped up in sort of what is our position to Rome, who is occupying us, and even if you're but it's all wrapped up in their theology too. Like if you're an Essene, you're out in the desert, you're one of the, like, you're a prepper, right? So like on a modern day in Essene, the people who wrote the Dead Sea, who the scribal copiers of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're out by the Dead Sea and they're like preppers. Like they're out like, when it all hits the fan over in Jerusalem, we'll be out here. You know what I mean? Like that sort of deal. Yeah, the Sadducees are more like, yeah, Rome, like, they're bought into their imperial overlords. The Pharisees are on the conservative side. Anyway, we'll get there when we get there, guys. Okay? Yeah, is that all right? Yeah, it is interesting. This is all New Testament era stuff. This is all post-exile stuff too. So within the story of the Bible, the people of Israel, they're about to enter into the land, and then they're going to live there for like 1,000 years, and then they're going to be expelled from the land at the end of the Old Testament. And then right at the end of the Old Testament, they're going to come back to the land, and then that's when all these factions start arising, and then that's when Messiah comes. And anyway, we'll get there when we get there. Okay. We are wrapping the Torah today. That was the main point. We're wrapping the first 5 books. It's also called Pentateuch. Sometimes you might find it called Pentateuch at different times. But it's normally called the Torah. That's the Hebrew word for law. And the main part of the Torah that we have been focusing on the past few weeks is the book of Exodus, or the story of the Exodus, in which the people of Israel were brought out of slavery, being redeemed by the blood of a perfect sacrifice, the blood of a perfect lamb that was painted on their doors, so that they survived, so that their firstborn survived the night of the Passover. And then they were brought through the waters. They were brought to Mount Sinai. They were brought to the mountain of God in the wilderness, in which the glory cloud came down, the presence of God came down. Moses entered into that glory cloud. He saw all these marvelous things. He was granted all of these visions of how they are supposed to live as a kingdom of priests. He received what we call the law, the Torah, right? Meaning, here's how you are to live your lives, the 10 Commandments, the Levitical law, the architectural design of the tabernacle, and the design of the priesthood, vestments, and all these things that we talked about. And then by the end of the Mount Sinai time, that glory cloud that came down onto the mountain of Sinai moves from the mountain of Sinai, and where does it go? Onto the tabernacle. Okay, so do you kind of see the idea of God coming down to meet the people, so that they would be a kingdom of priests, so that he can show them how to be a holy nation, a set apart nation, a light to the nations, right? And then that cloud moves to the tabernacle, so that now God is dwelling in the midst of the people, right? Tabernacle means dwelling place. So God is now dwelling literally in the middle of the people of Israel, okay? The first chapters of the book of Numbers are going to explain how you have the tabernacle at the center, then you have the Levites right outside the tabernacle tent courtyard, and then you have the different tribes organized all around, sort of radiating out. So God's presence is in the middle, his presence is radiating out into the people, and then the people themselves are to be radiating God's presence out into the world. Does that make sense? So God's in the midst of the people. He is radiating out into the people. The people are to be radiating out, emanating God's presence into the world. That's how it's supposed to be in this part of the Bible, right? In an ideal world, that is how it's supposed to be set up. And that's ultimately how it's supposed to be set up back in the beginning. God made male and female in his image. Image means as his representative, right? The people on the ground, on the earth, that are reflecting God's identity, right? And then, of course, that they abandon their responsibility, the fall. So the idea here is you're supposed to view the indwelling of the tabernacle as a sort of like God is restoring something about that relationship in the Garden of Eden. Maybe not to its fullness yet, of course not to its fullness, but God is sort of doing what he was trying to do in the garden with humanity, but humanity, rebelled. Now he's setting that system up again, but now in a mobile way and in a fallen world, of course. The people of Israel are not going to follow through on their role as a kingdom of priests. That's sort of the point. So, and we don't really want to get ahead of ourselves, but that's what's going on right now. This is what the people of Israel in the present, in the story of the Bible, are experiencing. They're experiencing God. The Most High God has come to live in our presence. Now we are going to go into the Promised Land. And the Promised Land is going to also be that. It's going to be this dwelling place of God where his presence is going to radiate out from this land, and it's going to bless the entire world. Remember what the promise was to Abraham: in you all the nations are going to be blessed, right? Speaking of which, bring it to contemporary conversation. That is one of the theological reasons, what I just said, one of the theological reasons why modern Jews are so, again, theologically possessive over that land. Does that make sense? So the idea is we have to have the land because it is from the land that God is, from us or through us in the land, that God is restoring the world. Does that make sense? So they don't have the rest of the Bible really that they're looking at. They're looking at this part of the Bible. And so does that make sense, guys? Any questions about that? But you can kind of see how that theology of the past is affecting the present. So just something to think about. So in this part of scripture, God has now come down onto the tabernacle, and now they're going to move through the wilderness from the Sinai mountain, the Sinai wilderness, and they're going to come to the edge of the promised land. And are they going to enter into the promised land? No. Why not?
Because they still haven't given up their identity in Egypt.
Yeah, that's a way of thinking about it. They have not trusted in their God yet, in the way that is necessary for them to encounter what it means to enter into the promised land, because the promised land needs to be conquered. Okay. The promised land needs to be cleansed. The promised land needs to be approached in such a way that they have confidence that they will be able to live in it. And when they come to it, they ultimately say, this is a land full of giants, and it's a land that swallows its inhabitants. It's the language that they use. So they think if we cross over this boundary line into this land, we're gonna bite it. We're gonna die. Okay, like there's no reason why we should enter into this land. And so that is what's going to cause them to wander in the wilderness for 40 years until that entire generation dies off. And then finally, there will be a new generation 2 weeks from now in the book of Joshua. As the Torah closes, it closes without having anyone enter the land. The Torah closes, and then in the book of Joshua, we have the entering into the promised land. Okay? We'll talk a little bit more about the significance of the promised land today and in the following weeks, because now we're really entering into where is going to be the main setting of the Bible for the rest of Scripture, even in the New Testament, unless you're in like the book of Acts, but is the promised land. What's significant about the promised land? Well, let me go back to this map, actually. So, yep.
Yeah, I think I'm realizing I've been misunderstanding the story in my life. So
Okay.
I thought they wandered 40 years because they were lost.
No.
They just didn't want to go in. The promised land.
They come right up to the edge of it. They spy it out. They send scouts in, and we'll read that today. And then they come back and they say, nope.
Wow.
Yeah. And then,
Mount Sinai.
yeah, kind of like Mount Sinai, except it's a little bit different. In this case, they don't think that God will deliver them through the fact that they need to conquer the land, that it's full of giants. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about what that means this time. But yeah. So if you guys remember where we are in the world, okay, where we are in the world is this is Africa. This is like the northeastern tip of Africa, the continent of Africa, right? This is the westernmost portion of Asia. So if you keep moving this way, you'll have like Iran over here, and then India over here, and then China over here, okay? And then on this side, you have the Mediterranean. And so if you move that way across the Mediterranean, you have Turkey up here, and then you'll eventually hit Greece and Italy. And if you move northward, you'll hit, Germany and Britain. And if you keep moving westward, you'll hit Spain. And then if you go across the Atlantic, you'll reach America, right? So that's where we are in the world. Just hopefully you guys are okay with your geography and visualizing that out. But that's where we are. What that makes the land of Canaan, this little strip right here, the promised land, what that makes this strip is it makes it a link or a land bridge between the three major continents of the old world. That is Africa, Europe, and Asia, right? Those are the three continents of the old world. And this is that space, because this is all desert, right? So if you want to travel, you're traveling down into Africa through Canaan. If you're traveling up into Europe through Africa, then you're going through the promised land. It is the link. It is the linchpin of the entire old world. Okay. And you can see why it's this land that is the land in which God is going to radiate out his message, right? That's true of the New Testament. That's true of the gospel. The gospel goes forth from sort of what is the center of the world. Does that make sense? Geographically speaking. Okay. I don't mean literally speaking. I just mean like as far as the movement of people in the world. This land was a very foundational and important land. Okay. And so let's go ahead and read them coming up to the borders of the land and read about what happens when they get there. Okay. So turn to Numbers chapter 23. The book of Numbers, I said this in a previous meeting, kind of sounds boring. It's called the book of Numbers because there are some numbers in it. But census data. Are you good? Numbers chapter 13 and 14 is what we're going to read.
Chapter 13 or chapter 23?
Did I say 23? Oh, I meant 13. Sorry. Numbers, it's called the book of Numbers based off of just later tradition. It's originally a book that's called, I believe it's Bar Midbar. That's the Hebrew. It's in the wilderness. Okay, so their time in the wilderness, their time living in not the land. They've moved from Mount Sinai, the wilderness of Sinai. And wilderness just means desert. They're living in desert land, right? They're living in a place that does not have the resources that they would want to have. Not a place that you would settle. A place that you only can live as nomads, essentially. Not a place that is your home. You're sort of wandering, right? And so in Numbers chapter 13, they're coming to the land, and we will go ahead and read it. Okay? How's that sound? Okay, you guys ready? Starting at verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders." So at Yahweh's command, Moses sent them out from the desert of Paran. All of them were leaders of the Israelites. These are their names. And then it gives all the 12 tribes and then the 12 spies. Okay. Take note of Caleb, who's representing the tribe of Judah. Okay. And then also take note of, let's see, you guys see, forget it. Just take note of Caleb of the tribe of Judah. That's really important. He's going to be exploring. Oh, there we go. Moses gave Hoshea, son of Nun, the name of Joshua. So that's what I was looking for. I was looking for Joshua. So Caleb and Joshua, okay, super important figures. So just take note of them. These are the names of the men Moses sent to explore the land. When Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he said, "Go up through the Negev and onto the hill country, and see what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land." It was the season for the first ripe grapes. So just think about this for a moment. Moses and the people of Israel, they consider that their ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob already had lived in this land hundreds and hundreds of years before this moment. And that it was those ancestors that were promised this land by God, that you are going to be the inheritors of this land. And then, of course, they have these ancestral tales of, for example, Abraham in Genesis chapter 14, fighting this great war and rescuing all of the Canaanites from these attacking invaders. And so this idea that we already have a history in this land, we just haven't experienced it yet. And so the idea is now, let's go and see what the land is like, because we've heard about it through our ancestral tales all our lives, but now we're going to see what it's like. So they went up and explored the land from the desert of Zin as far as Rehob, toward Lebo Hamath. They went up through the Negev and came to Hebron, which is where, by the way, in the book of Genesis, it says that the patriarchs spent most of their time living in the city of Hebron, or in the area of Hebron. Okay, jumping down, when they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them, along with some pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut off there. At the end of 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. So they took this giant cluster of grapes that 2 of them have to carry at one time, right? This giant vineyard, essentially, that they're carrying back as proof or evidence of the fruitfulness of the land, okay? They came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live in the sea along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we will certainly do it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we cannot attack these people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread out among the Israelites a bad report about the land that they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. And then a little parentheses. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Okay, so the 12 spies come back to the people of Israel, to Moses and Aaron, and they say, hey, it's a great land, but it's filled with very, very strong civilizations, very, very strong warriors. In fact, these civilizations, as you might know, they descend from the even greater, more ancient pre-flood civilizations that God destroyed all the way back in the story of Noah. And they say, it's pretty scary, okay? We don't want to enter into this land, because isn't this why God destroyed the world in the first place? Is because of these Nephilim figures, and now they're here. Why are they here, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. Also, by the way, who is gung-ho about entering into the land?
Caleb.
Caleb of what? Judah. Caleb of the line of Judah. Okay. And Joshua. That's actually very significant and very important. Okay. Sorry? Well, when we get into the book of Joshua, I can explain that a little bit more. But remember, Judah is the kingly tribe. Judah is the tribe in which Jesus comes from. I'll give you the short version. And then Joshua is the name Jesus. Okay, so Jesus is our English sort of pronunciation. It would actually be Joshua if we actually pronounced it like we transliterated it 1-to-1 from the Hebrew, Yeshua or Yehoshua. Yeah. So anyway, but when we get to the book of Joshua, we'll talk more about that.
Can we unpack something on this?
Yep.
We just read?
Yep.
I don't know why I'm struggling with this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to find the dinosaurs in the Bible.
Okay.
It says giants, the grasshoppers, and all that. I understand Goliath was this big, tall guy. Maybe he was just a shorter cousin of the big guys. But how can we have so many dinosaur bones in the world?
Yeah.
And we don't have any evidence at all, anything.
Of giants?
Well,
Of dinosaurs.
like we try to AI what the brontosaurus looked like and all that. We don't know if it was that everything walked on two legs.
Yeah. Again, I'm not a paleontologist, but I think I said all the way back when you first asked the question, like it sort of just depends on how you want to interpret when the dinosaurs are taking place in history. Because scientists will tell you that like dinosaurs and humans never walked the earth at the same time. Does that make sense? So dinosaurs plus Bible does not really compute necessarily. Yeah, because the idea is that the dinosaurs lived prior to Adam and Eve, if that makes sense.
I don't think they were doing any kind of excavation at that time.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like I can accept it if they came before Adam and Eve. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I think that it's the idea that if you believe in a literal 7-day creation of 24 hours,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Or if you believe that those were periods of time that stretched out longer years.
Yeah.
And if they were longer years, then the dinosaurs could have existed within those longer years and gone extinct before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's the only way that we can really say who can we measure a day, right?
We sat under a pastor when we went to People's Church who taught another version of the gap theory between verse 1 and 2, right?
Of Genesis chapter
that
1.
There could be millions of years between verse 1 and 2 of Genesis. So there's different ways that people have made sense of it all biblically.
Yeah. So the whole thing about the giants, it's just not really connected to the idea of dinosaurs, I think is the main. Yeah.
That's kind of where I was.
It's not connected. What the giants represent is they represent great kings of great and violent civilizations. Okay. That's ultimately what you have to be thinking about. And we'll talk more about that. Okay.
So giants is kind of like calling the San Francisco Giant. It's just squash it, not
Sort of.
big giant.
They're actually like big.
They seem to be big people too, because when they're described in the Bible, they're described as very tall people, very tall and strong people, right? So, yeah, we'll get into more of that. Do you remember our Nephilim meeting?
I was there part of it.
For part of it. Okay. Well, we'll go over some of those slides again. The idea is that everyone just think about it this way. When we were reading in Genesis chapter 6 about the sons of God went into the daughters of man and bore to them the fallen ones, the Nephilim were on the earth, and the mighty warriors, and the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward when the sons of God went into the daughters of men, right? And we talked about how that was tapping into a widely accepted idea of the ancient world, that the great kings of our civilizations, the great leaders, that they all descend from the gods themselves, okay? And so that's what gives them the right, that's what gives them the power to be the kings, to be the leaders, is that they come from the gods themselves, right? And so, with all of that said, in the book of Numbers, what you have now is you have the people of Israel encountering groups who are part of that history, that are part of that story of the idea of the sons of daughters going to the sons of God coming to the daughters of men, ... Okay? We'll get into those slides. Let me just read this next chapter and then we'll get into the slides, okay? So this is chapter 14. That night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, "If only we had died in Egypt or in this wilderness. Why is Yahweh bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to each other, "We should choose a leader and go back to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole Israelite community gathered there. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes, and said to the entire Israelite community, "The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If Yahweh is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against Yahweh, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. The land will not devour us. We will devour the land. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them." But the whole Israelite community talked about stoning them. Then the glory of Yahweh appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites. Yahweh said to Moses, "How long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me in spite of all the signs that I have performed among them? I will strike them down with the plague and destroy them, but I will make you into a nation greater and stronger than they. Moses said to Yahweh, then the Egyptians will hear about it. By your power you brought up these people from among them, and they will tell of the inhabitants of the land about it. They have already heard that you, Yahweh, are with these people, and that you, Yahweh, have been seen face to face, and that your cloud stays over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you put all these people to death, leaving none alive, the nations who have heard this report about you will say, Yahweh was not able to bring these people into the land he promised them on oath and slaughtered them in the wilderness. Now may the Lord's strength be displayed, just as you have declared. Yahweh is slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving sin and rebellion. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children of the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation. In accordance with your great love, forgive the sin of these people, just as you pardoned them from the time they left Egypt until now. Pause there. What's going on here is multiple times in the story of the testing of the people of Israel, of Yahweh God, Moses oftentimes will stand as human intercessor, right? The one who soothes the anger or the wrath of God. Remember how this is a type. This is a typology. What is it a typology of?
He's a priest.
Okay, a priestly function, but yes, Jesus, of course, who the idea here is that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all humanity, as Paul says, but it is the Son of God, the intercessor, who is able to stay the hand of the wrath of God, right? Through his intercession. Okay. So, and you asked me at the end of last week. So do you want to ask it again? Well, what is it exactly you asked me? You asked me something like, well, is God being serious here? Right?
Yeah.
You said this makes it seem as though Moses is more merciful than God. And I said, of course not. Of course, that's not what is being presented here. What's being presented is, as you said, a test. What's being presented is an example in which God is modeling this sort of human intercessory role, right? In which he is going to, because he's already done all of these things. And of course, God knows, as Moses is saying, that it is for the reputation of Yahweh that he would stay his hand against the people of Israel as a merciful God. So yeah, it was a really good question that you asked me, because this whole threatening situation has already happened. So it's like multiple tests. And then they're always appealing back to, no, God, you promised. No, God, you promised. No, God, you promised. So it's a test of faith for sure. It's sort of like the test of Abraham. God promised that through Isaac, the promise of Abraham is going to be blessed. So what's going on here, Anyway, does that make sense? Yeah. Kind of.
I'm a little confused with that.
Okay.
It does seem like she said, God was ready to smite everyone, and Moses had to beg, no, would you? To me, if it was something like if my mom promised to take me to the fair or something, and she was like, you know what, you're acting up, I'm not taking you, but you promised. That's like me begging her. That's not a test of faith.
So what Moses is appealing to is he's appealing to the character of God that God has already shown himself to be, right? And so
He needs a reminder of his character.
It's not that he needs a reminder. It's, again, the test is the people need the reminder. Does that make sense?
Is he a bit rhetorical then, maybe, or it's a threat? He's not really going to do it.
No, I don't read it that way.
He's wanting them to
Right.
say.
But he's done it already.
When?
The flood.
Okay, so he has killed off people, but that's a different circumstance. Yeah, but those are different things than he has made these promises to these specific people. And so the idea is that Moses is given an opportunity to appeal to what he knows to be true, that is these specific promises that you promised, right? And so the idea here is that I know you to be a God that fulfills his promises. So it's an act of faith.
The reminder, though, that people need a reminder of what God did.
Yeah.
Is God speaking to the people or just to Moses?
All of this it says he spoke in the sight of all the people, right? So the idea is that everyone is bearing witness to this moment.
So even though they all bore witness to this, they still didn't go in?
Right.
That's why.
Yeah. So, well, I think he says, well, what he's going to say is he's going to say, you have behaved this way 10 times in the wilderness. He says, you have shown contempt for me 10 times. And so your children are going to enter, but you are not going to enter. I'm not going to allow you to enter, essentially. Yeah. So that's what, every time that it's been we've been in the wilderness and we've come to this moment in which we think that we're screwed and we want to kill Moses and all these things. And then Moses has to remind us essentially again of the promises of God through his intercession. God is building that up towards this like 10, which is a symbolic number for like completion or totality, right? And anyway, does that make sense? Go ahead.
So is it because God intentionally chose Moses to lead the Israelites out because he knew Moses' heart? Like Moses seemed like the mediator for the people and for God.
Yeah, you wouldn't say that he's a mediator between them, for sure. Yeah. And he knows Moses' heart for sure. And he knows that Moses is the person to do that sort of thing. I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that every time what the wilderness represents is the real wilderness represents the place of testing over and over again. It's kind of like, Jesus in his wilderness wanderings, he's encountered with these moments in which there has to be sort of a lesson that is being learned, but it's not necessarily being learned by Jesus. It's being learned by all of us who read the story. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of what's going on here is the idea of, no, you promised, and I know you to be a God that fulfills his promises, right? That is sort of, and that's what's going on in the story of the Isaac story, of the binding of Isaac story, the Abraham sacrificing, told to sacrifice. It's the same thing. I know that you promised this, right? So I'm still acting in faith, okay? And just application principle of Bible study is that he does put his people through tests, right? So it's oftentimes that you need to read that. And again, the point of the test is not really for God knows who you are. It's not that God is finding out. It's that you are going through that lesson, right? Or the people of Israel going through that lesson. You're discovering what that means. So
Moses was willing to give up his life.
Right, exactly. That was back in the golden calf story. So again, this story has already taken place. And again, Moses acting as intercessor, it gives an opportunity for you to see what it means that for Christ to be who he is, right? So there's a number of different reasons for a story like this, but
yeah, I just wanted to share that, like, it's the same God as yesterday as it is today, because I have experienced that where it looked like it was completely hopeless, and I asked God. I said, "Hey, you promised me of this, and I know that your will is better for me, and I don't understand it, but it would be so. Can I show you off if it changed to this direction?"
That's exactly what Moses is doing.
And God fulfilled that.
Yeah.
In my life.
So the idea is, in a circumstance in your own life where you feel like things are going the wrong way, right? Maybe because you made your own mistakes and things are going the wrong way. To turn back to God is to say, God, I know that you are abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, and I know that I'll suffer the consequences in the immediate, but I know that you're going to deliver me. You said, right? That's the idea. You're not just going to abandon me. You're not just going to let me die. You said, God. And you're appealing to God's own nature, right?
It's just like the Psalms, right?
Yeah, the Psalms do that all the time. Yeah, you asked me that, Hunter. You texted me about, why is the Psalm talking in this way? It's because it's talking about, it feels like the Lord has abandoned me in this moment, but God, you said, and so now I will put my hope in the Lord because I trust in who he is, right? So that's exactly what is being presented here, okay? Of course. It's a print. Well, and the way that we know that that is the way of thinking about it is because we're providing these extra examples throughout the Bible where it's that same sort of repetitive pattern of things might look dire in the moment and it might look like the wrath of God is coming upon me, but I appeal to who God is himself and who he has revealed himself to be. And that is what stays the wrath, essentially, like is holding to the true promises of God, even though in the moment I'm experiencing consequences. But I know that God is, yeah, I'm experiencing doubt, but I can hold to the Lord is abounding in steadfast love, visiting the iniquity of the father upon the children to the third and fourth generation, but forgiving the iniquity to 1,000 generations. It's the idea in the present I might suffer consequences, but forevermore he will be merciful to me. Okay? Does that make sense? Good? Awesome. But let's continue. Okay. The Lord replied, I have forgiven them as you asked. Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of Yahweh fills the whole earth, not one of those who saw my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, but who disobeyed me and tested me these 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land that I promised on oath to their ancestors. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Since the Amalekites and the Canaanites are living in the valleys, turn back tomorrow and set towards the desert along the route to the Red Sea. So again, there will be a new generation that rises up, a generation that didn't come from the riches of Egypt, even though that they were in slavery. Now we're going to have a whole generation that's going to be brought up in the wilderness. You know, the quote from Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, you know, you merely adopted the dark, but I was born in it. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the idea that's being presented, the generation that inherits the promised land is the generation who grew up in the wilderness. Okay. And so they are the ones who are able to truly not want to go back to this land of slavery, right? They're not going to be looking backward. They're only going to be looking forward into the promised land. Okay.
What about Moses? He has to just be out in the desert with them, even though he didn't lose faith.
So maybe, well, God doesn't say it here that Moses is not going to enter into the land, but Moses is going to do something later on which will cause him to not, and that God is going to say, you're not going to enter the land now. So yeah, there's so many things that could be said about that, and we'll talk a little bit about that next week. Okay. Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, how long will this wicked community grumble against me? I have heard the complaints of these grumbling Israelites, so tell them, as surely as I live, declares Yahweh, I will do to you the very thing I heard you say. In this wilderness, your bodies will fall. Every one of you, 20 years old or more, who was counted in the census, who has grumbled against me, not one of you will enter the land. So you're all going to live out your days in the land and die in the land. That's essentially what is going on in these chapters. And that is what the rest of the book of Numbers is going to be covering, is stories of Israel living in the wilderness and continuing to grumble, continuing to have strife, continuing to test Yahweh, their God, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the slides. I'm going to teach through the slides a little bit, and then we're going to jump to the end of the book of Numbers, and I'm going to tell one story at the end of this wilderness wanderings, okay? And I'll do that in the next hour. Does that sound good? Okay, let's go. We talked through this a lot. I went through these slides already, but just to reiterate, they go into this great land, and then they see how luscious and beautiful. It's full of fruit. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. And we're going to talk more about that land in a couple weeks when we get to the book of Joshua and they're actually entering into it. But who do they see there? He says that we saw the descendants of Anak there. And the descendants of Anak, they come from the Nephilim. So these are recap slides on the Nephilim. We're going to use context clues and different verses to outline for us who the Nephilim are, right? So this is the passage that we just read. They spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land that they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there were of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. And then, like later on in Deuteronomy, it says the Emim, a large and numerous people, as tall as the Anakim, the descendants of Anak, formerly inhabited the land. Like the Anakim, they're usually reckoned as Rephaim. The Moabites call them Emim. So these groups, the Emim, the Anakim, the Rephaim, who are they, right? We haven't exactly figured this out. You guys know what we're talking about, but again, we have to sort of get a sense of what is being spoken about. King Og of Bashan was the last survivor of the giant Rephaim. His bed was made of iron, and was more than 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. It can still be seen in the Amorite city of Rabbah today. Interesting. Joshua, chapter 11. At the time Joshua came and wiped out the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, from all the hill country of Judah, and from the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them in their towns. None of the Anakim was left in the land of the Israelites. Some remained in Gaza, and then, of course, and Gath. And in 1 Samuel, a champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. He was over 9 feet tall. This is all the way in the book of Samuel. But do you guys see what's going on here, right? The Anakim, the Rephaim, the descendants of the Nephilim, they are considered these giant warriors, these champions, right? These figures of renown, as Genesis chapter 6 says. If you were there for our meeting on Genesis chapter 6, can you explain to me what's going on here? What's up with the Nephilim? Why are they important? Why is it important that giants exist in the story of the Bible?
Because it was never intended. It was something. It was a product of the angels coming and sleeping with.
Okay. Never intended. Okay, good. This idea of an unholy union of heaven and earth, right? What else?
Well, big expectations, big letdown.
Okay, what does that mean?
You know, in order for David to show up, he had to go up against somebody.
Okay, gotcha. That's actually pretty interesting. So the idea that these great warriors are God is going to be able to show his glory by choosing a kingdom of slaves to take down these massive warriors, right? These creatures that are, supposed to be rulers over the world. And God says, no, my people are, the ones in whom the whole world is going to be blessed, and they are a kingdom of slaves, right? They were brought out of slavery. So that's good. Remember that the Nephilim is tapping into contemporary traditions among all of the ancient cultures of the world of what are essentially, in our modern parlance, called demigods, okay? The idea of spiritual beings sort of being able to produce some sort of corrupted offspring. Now, in the heroic Greek myths, they're not really corrupted in the sense they're just lower gods, essentially lower.
Hercules.
Yeah, Hercules or Achilles or things like this. And so I sort of wanted to present back in the Genesis chapter 6 examples of these beings that are considered in these other mythologies, like Aeneas, for example, said to be the son of Aphrodite, and he is the forefather. He comes out of this Trojan War story, and he is the forefather of the city of Rome. So the idea here is that Julius Caesar, is descended from Aeneas, right? So he has a right to the throne of Rome as Caesar, as emperor, because he's descended from the gods, right? Same thing with Achilles. He's the central figure in the Iliad. He's the son of a sea goddess, right? And he's a Greek hero. Gilgamesh is the oldest one of these, coming from the Babylonian tradition, and the another one of those in that area in Mesopotamia. And he's said to be 2/3 Apkallu. Remember, we talked about how the story of the Apkallu is going to be the Sumerian version of this story of the sort of the 7 sages that come down and give humans divine knowledge and then give them offspring that is godlike offspring, right? And so he's said to be the founders of these ancient cultures and these ancient civilizations as well, right? And then we also talked about how for the ancient people, the idea of giants, particularly in the ancient world, like in the pre-flood history and within their own world, is embedded within their own archaeology, that they have these megalithic structures, right? That they have these great tombs that were built, right, for these giants, that they have these great structures that are like aligned with the stars in the sky, and that these pagan temples, and that there's a lot that goes into their culture about the idea that at one time, or maybe even in the present, the gods come down and they inhabit the bodies of the people on earth, and they give birth to these giants, to these great kings, right? Does that make sense, guys? I know it's a little bit of a struggle, and we talked a little bit about sort of what could that, if you like, let's say if you had a video camera, what that would look like. And I don't know what that would look like. Okay, that's all I gotta say. There's some way of looking at it as though there's a demonic possession of 2 humans, essentially, something like that. It's up to you to sort of investigate what that means. But ultimately, that's what gives birth to the story of the Nephilim, the unholy union of heaven and earth, out of which the violent kingdoms of the world emerge. That is the most significant part of this, and this is why it's relevant for the story of the Bible in totality, is the Nephilim by themselves are not the most significant part of this story. The most significant part of this story is the kingdoms that they found, okay? The kingdoms that they give birth to, that is the important part, okay? So that's why, let me just present it to you this way. You have the fallen sons of God, the fallen angels, plus the daughters of humanity give birth to the giant warrior kings who found the civilizations of the world, okay? It is those civilizations of the world that you continue to do battle with in the present. Does that make sense? So that is why this is a relevant story throughout the entire story of Scripture, is because honestly, most people in contemporary culture, they get these two parts, they just skip the middle part, essentially, in that they sort of forget how we got from here to here, how we get from fallen angels, powers, principalities, demons, to fallen world, right? To fallen institutions, to fallen corrupt governments, to fallen. Does that make sense, guys? That is sort of what is being presented here. Is when you think of the Nephilim, don't just think about the hulking masses of meat that walk around, stomp around on the earth with their swords and their spears. Think about the kingdoms that they built and are defending. Okay? That's what you are to think about. And that is why there's a very, very, very ancient way of reading and a very, very ancient tradition that says that when you kill a Nephilim, his spirit remains on the earth as a demon. Okay? That's why it's a very, very ancient way of looking at it, is that you slay the giant Og, right? But his spirit still roams the earth, plaguing the people of the earth. Okay? That is why, because when Paul in the New Testament says we wrestle with powers and principalities, rulers in the heavenly places, he's talking about the powers behind these kingdoms that we wrestle with, the power of Rome, right? You see what I'm saying? The power of these different pagan deities and things like that. These pagan deities, they gave birth to kings who founded their civilizations. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? Yeah, so when we get into the story of Joshua and the conquering of the promised land, the idea here is that God wants Israel to displace these kingdoms and build a true kingdom, right? A city made by God, or a city of God, not a city of the fallen angels, a city of fallen angels plus humanity built by these beings, but built by God's people, the people who were enslaved in Egypt and now brought into this land only by his power. You had something? Oh, I thought you. Oh, you did.
No, he did something. I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I did have a question.
Yep.
So, are you saying then that's like the idea that possibly that the principalities
Mhm.
is the idea of a spirit that's over a
Regional area?
area would be potentially
A dead Nephilim? Not necessarily. I think that the demons that possess in the New Testament the most ancient tradition is that the demons that possess individuals are the spirits of, they're disembodied, they once had a body. That's sort of the the idea. But they are in league with those principalities, yeah.
I just meant that like when you're talking about like if there was a Nephilim like of Rome, that those are principalities.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you can consider it. There's a spiritual hierarchy, a spiritual pyramid, so they're among those, you could say. That's I always say read The Unseen Realm by Michael Heiser. Okay, he's the best explainer of these things. There are other books, but in bringing a scholarly work to a contemporary level, that book is really, really good for this topic.
It's almost like a battle of like freedom and control. Like freedom is our birthright, given to us by God.
Yeah.
And like control and power dominating is.
Yeah. So Egypt is an example of these kingdoms, right? That we're enslaved to, right? So the idea of, and at the end of the Bible, it's all called Babylon. So that's sort of the term that is used at the end of the Bible. But the idea is that great beast that is thrown down at the end of, it's like an amalgamation of all of these kingdoms together, right? But yes, you're right. The idea is that the people are to be liberated from their slavery, brought into the freedom of the promised land, to worship the one true God. But they, time and time again are going to be enslaving themselves under these lower deities, right? Sorry?
Fear.
Yeah, through their fear, yeah. But yeah, that's a good question. You could say that they're linked. The point here is that when Joshua, when the people of Israel go to kill these giants, the idea is that they're still going to be dealing with these giants, even though that they slayed them. They're still going to be dealing with the spirits of those giants. The spirit of the giant is still going to be dwelling in the land until the Messiah comes and starts casting out demons out of people and saying, I'm going to take over the entire world, essentially, you know? So does that make sense, guys? This is super important. Seriously, super important for understanding what's going on at this point in the Bible and what it means for Christ to say, go therefore and baptize the nations. You know what I mean? Baptize those nations that were founded by these giants. Okay? Good.
I
Can I
guess
add something?
No, I guess I'm confused. So when a third of the angels fell down, and demons were here, I thought those were the ones that were here on earth with Satan that were ruling.
So that is a modern what in my opinion mispresentation of a verse in Revelation chapter 12, which is talking about the rulers and principalities in the unseen realm being thrown down with Satan at the birth of the Messiah, not at the fall, not at the Genesis 6 fall. We want to place chronologically where that third of the angels, Satan's angels, is, where John is placing it, which is at the birth of the Messiah, not at all of this prehistory stuff. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that's after.
Yeah, that's
They're
after.
still roaming around too.
Well, at the birth of the Messiah, this is getting pretty far ahead, but the idea here is that once God comes incarnate, now he already is starting to liberate humanity spiritually, right? And he's throwing down Satan and his angels, the demons. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
Okay, when we get to the nativity story, Luke, first chapters of Luke, we'll talk more about that, and the Magi story. You had something, Ryan?
No, I just want to tell you thank you, Eric, for unpacking that.
Sure.
Amazing.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
When you were teaching at the Beor campus, you were barely getting onto that, and then I wasn't able to go. And it was like I was eating a bowl of cereal over there, and then I wasn't able to finish.
Okay.
But today, wow, that was amazing how you brought that into life, because the Nephilim, the easiest way for me to wrap my mind around and see it physically in my mind are strongholds that we have.
Yeah.
Because it talks about, like, if you leave yourself empty, that Nephilim, that spirit will go and grab 7 more giants. Because I understand strongholds. I watch how people continuously try to get rid of a stronghold over and over and over and over, and don't.
Why are you using the word stronghold? Because the New Testament uses that word. Why does the New Testament? Stronghold means a fortified city, which is where they're about to be going battle against. So yeah, you're making that, by using the word stronghold, you are understanding that connection really, really well. So yeah, that's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we use the word stronghold to talk about the places in which God, or excuse me, the powers of evil have like really, really fortified areas, right? Spiritually speaking. Yeah. So, and that's what we're talking about. They're about to go do battle against strongholds, literal strongholds. Okay, good.
How many of the daughters of humans did these Nephilim have?
There are it's not described in the Bible. Later traditions, like in the book of Enoch, will say like, 200 angels came down. That doesn't mean that's just the male side. So I don't. And again, how that literally looks is up to your imagination. Okay. I think the most, you could say, sober way of looking at it, least fantastical way of looking at it, is the idea that the ritual involves the possession of the male, that there's essentially 3 parties involved, 2 humans and 1 spirit that inhabits the male.
That was number 3.
Yeah. Well, that's one reading of it. But there are times in the Bible in which angels take on bodies. So then you just, do they always have to take, possess? An angel possesses a human? That doesn't really sound right. So, because you do have angels with bodies. So, I don't know how to, one knows. It's mysterious. Anyway. Okay, are we ready to continue, guys? We have a lot more to get to, okay? So I know that this is a fun conversation, but we have an amazing story that we have to read. So when Israel comes to the border of the Promised Land, where they are supposed to reside as a kingdom of priests, they respond in fear and contempt for their God, who has charged them to conquer a land ruled by giants. We're not going to read it today, but Psalm 78, go read it in your own time, explores the power of God that was manifest among the people during this time, and how the people still did not trust in him. By the end of the poem, the focus is on the line of David as the chosen lineage from a rebellious people. Why would that be the case? Of course, David comes later on the Bible, but the psalm, it says, you brought us out of the promised land. You did all these great signs and wonders. Still we had contempt. Still we had contempt. Still we had contempt for you. You charged us to conquer the land of giants. Still we had contempt for you. And then there's a little end epilogue to that psalm, and it says, therefore you chose David. What's David famous for? Initially, no, just killing Goliath, killing the last of the giants. Okay, so just this theme of slaying giants, of not having fear in the face of giants, in face of the kingdoms of the world, right? Being willing to, in the charge of God, conquer the kingdoms of the world. That is what marks David, right, as being famous in the story of David. And so anyway, the idea here is that the psalmist is drawing a comparison between the people of Israel who had contempt for the Lord, even though that there were signs and wonders among them. And then it jumps all the way forward in history to David and says, David's the chosen one. You know what I mean?
Well, here,
And remember, Jesus is the son of David, okay? So
in the last verse 72, it says David shepherd with the integrity of heart.
yeah.
So the first generation of the people that came out of Egypt, they don't have that integrity of heart.
Mhm.
They're always, their identity is still tied with
Right.
Egypt.
Right. Yep.
So
And who is Caleb among what is his tribe? The tribe of Judah, the Davidic tribe. Okay? So again, this is why, look at all these hyperlinks, right? David is the one who is marked as like this figure who, no, he is the one who's willing to go up against these giants. Well, why are they saying David when it's Caleb actually in that story? You see what I'm saying? So anyway, and it's Jesus who willingly goes down into death because he knows he will conquer. Okay?
So then Caleb is also the lineage of Jesus as well.
He might be. I'd have to look at it. I don't know if he is. It says that he's in the tribe of Judah, though. Every time you have a Judah hyperlink, it doesn't have to be literally within the lineage for it to resonate, if that makes sense. Okay, so we have the giant clans, right? Just to bring it all home. Demonic tribes within the promised land, the Rephaim, Anakim, Zumimim, all these weird words of these different tribes. The Emim, among other names. They're giants, they're sorcerers, they're spellcasters within these giant tribes. They're child sacrificers. Okay, they're everything that the Lord, Yahweh God, says to not be. That's what these kingdoms are, okay? They're descendants of the prehistory Nephilim. And we talked about, how did they survive the flood? We already talked about it. Go back to that week. Rulers of the residents in Canaan. So they're these ruling mighty men within Canaan. And so the idea here is you are going to go cleanse the land of these abominations, okay, of these kingdoms that are sacrificing children, that are sorcerers, and things like that. So God said that the same Israel who was brought out of Egypt has now despised him 10 consecutive times on the way to the promised land. In biblical numerology, it seems that the number 10 is sometimes connected conceptually to that of judgment, like a sort of countdown to the last offense before consequence is due. Think about like the 10 plagues, for example. Israel's faithlessness has been to the detriment of the plan and purposes of God. Now he will wait for a new generation to rise up and take the role of a kingdom of priests instituted at Sinai that actually reside within the promised land. Okay? And so now, poor Moses. He had 40 years in Egypt, 40 years in the wilderness of Midian, then the Exodus happened, and now he has to live in the wilderness for 40 more years, and he never enters into the promised land. So we had Moses, who was the leader. He was this leader who came out. He was the prince of Egypt, who was brought out to the wilderness as a shepherd, and then he came back, and he was this mighty prophet of the Lord. And now he is going to be what I call Elder Moses, an old man, right? Leader in Israel during the 40 years of wilderness wanderings. He's the prophet over Joshua and the commanders of Israel. He's the prophet and leader during this time in which Israel actually is going to have to go up and do some battles, okay? That's the irony of it, is even when they're in the desert, they are going to fight a couple giants, and so we're going to talk about that. So you can imagine that this is the version of Moses that is actually taking the time to write all this stuff down, okay, during their wilderness wanderings is sort of the time in which there's a reflection on the Exodus, there's a reflection on gathering up these stories and let's talk through them. And now we're going to encounter these giants. And does that look like a man who can go up against giants? It doesn't. Oh, maybe. And you're saying, no, he has someone underneath him.
The stick looks pretty good.
Yeah, the stick looks good. He has someone underneath him, his second in command,
Aaron.
who is not Aaron, Yeshua, okay? So the second in command only to Moses. Moses is the successor as leader of Israel and leader of Israel during the conquest war. So this is the man who slays all those giants, right? Who is the leader of Israel during the time when they actually fight those giants. He's a key type of Christ, particularly because why did God, via the angel Gabriel said, hey, you're going to give birth to a son, Mary, and he's going to be named Joshua, okay? Because he's standing in this pattern of he's going to be the conqueror. He's going to bring about your kingdom, or God's kingdom. The kingdom of Israel is going to be not just in the promised land, but in the entire world. And we'll talk more about that as we get into it. But okay, good. Wow, we have a lot to get through. Let's turn to Numbers chapter 22. And what I'm going to do here is I might not read everything. Actually, chapter 21. Let's read chapter 21 first, okay? I might not be able to read everything, but I have a little tale to tell you, okay? This next section is a really, really cool tale, and we're going to read it. We're going to read parts of it together, and I'm going to tell you a story, okay? 2 stories, actually. One tiny one and then one larger one, okay? So the small one first. Numbers chapter 21. When the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming along the road to Atharim, he attacked the Israelites and captured some of them. Then Israel made this vow to Yahweh: if you will deliver this people into our hands, we will totally destroy the cities. The Lord listened to Israel's plea and gave the Canaanites over to them. They completely destroyed them and their towns, so the place was named Hormah. This is later on in these 40 years of wandering, okay? They traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom. But the people grew impatient along the way. They spoke against God and against Moses and said, why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? Is there no bread? There is no bread, there is no water, and we detest this miserable food, the manna that is given to us, right? This is what they're talking about. Man, they just don't stop, huh? The Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, we sinned when we spoke against Yahweh and against you. Pray that Yahweh will take the snakes away from us. Moses prayed for the people. Yahweh said to Moses, make a snake and put it up on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live. So Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole. Then anyone who was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. Kind of a small little story. Really important story. Has there been a serpent and a pole in the story of the Bible so far? There's been a serpent, yeah, in the Garden of Eden, good. But yes, the rod of Moses, right? So number one, the rod of the idea of the rod that turns into a serpent, right? So just think about that for a second here. But this is a really important story, right? So the solution and cure for the curse in this story is to behold that which you fear most. So let's talk about this for a second. Break down the story a little bit.
You just went right over that.
Sorry, I'm trying. Well, we have a really, really big story to get through, and it's not this one. So I'm like, let me give it to you shortly. But okay, so let's just go back and sort of analyze the story from the biblical perspective. Okay, so they grumble against the Lord, they sin against the Lord, and so the Lord allows them to experience a consequence, a curse. Right. The solution to that curse is what? They were bitten. Okay, yes, but speaking in the text, right? Put a snake on a pole and let everyone behold that snake on the pole. That is what will cure them. Okay? So the curse that they're experiencing, they need to look at a representative image of that curse, and then they will be cured. Okay? So why is it said in John chapter 3, no one has ever gone into heaven except the one who came down from heaven, the Son of Man? Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that everyone who believes may have eternal life. So what the story is doing for you of the bronze serpent is it's giving you an example of what the cross is. Okay? What is the cross? Behold the curse of your sin. Okay? Behold the curse of your sin on the man suffering that curse. That is what cures you. Look upon the crucified Christ. The snake on the pole that bit you, Christ is now experiencing that serpent on the cross. Okay? Is experiencing the curse of death, the crown of thorns upon his head, right? Remember, the ground will bring about thorns and thistles, right? That's part of the curse. He wears it as a crown. He's on the cross. Behold the curse upon the cross. And that is your life. That's what you fear most, isn't it? Dying. But Christ willingly goes down into death. He willingly dies. You behold him, you behold his example, and you are regenerated. You are given new life. You are deemed from that venom that is in your body. Are you following me here? I'm just giving you it outright, and we're not working through it because we have another text to get through. Okay? Thoughts on that before we continue?
That's the medicine side.
Yeah, the side of medicine. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Good point.
Why is that the sign of medicine?
Healing.
What is medicine?
Healing.
Yeah.
Ridding yourself
Healing.
of sickness.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it seems like this is like exposing the shadow within, like exposing what you can't see.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, it's in it.
So within the crucifixion, Paul says we preach Christ crucified, not the signs and wonders that the Jews want and the philosophy that the Greeks want, but Christ crucified, right? And the point is that in the sign of the cross, which this is you could say a proto-theological version of that, what you see is a sign of that which you fear most, that which you don't want, but that which you are still experiencing in the first place, which is the curse of God. Behold it coming upon the man, the Son of Man, as Jesus says, and put your belief in the Son of Man. That is your cure. To be confronted with that reality, right?
Yeah.
To be confronted that he says, unless you take up your cross and follow me, you won't enter the kingdom.
It's just such a good story because it just shows that like you're gonna go through it anyways. Like, you're gonna
Exactly.
fight giants anyways.
Mhm.
You can either do it in fear, or you can do it with God.
The hyperlink to the giants is incredible. So that's really, really good. You're going to have to do it anyway. Like, we all have to die sometime, right? The point is, do you embrace it by looking upon the one who died on your behalf? And again, I'm not making this up. Jesus is the one who said that he is the serpent that's raised up in the wilderness. That when you behold like Jesus's command is to die to yourself, right? He dies in your place, and then he says, follow me. So he representatively dies on your behalf, and then you die, and you die in him, and you live in him. So look upon the serpent, okay?
To me, it kind of also means you stare Satan in the face. I'm not afraid of you.
Yeah, if you
Do
say,
this.
yeah, you could, yeah, exactly. Well, you can say, so that's something else. You said exposing the shadow. What the cross represents, and this is getting ahead of ourselves, but it represents the most shameful way to die. And Paul says in Colossians, he says, Jesus Christ put the powers and principalities to shame on the cross. Okay? So it's the most shameful way to die, but in him willingly embracing the God incarnate, embracing it, it puts the powers and principalities that who use the curse, to get you to come underneath their slavery, the fear of death. That's from the book of Hebrews. He puts them to shame through his willingness to die on behalf of the world. Okay, really deep stuff. We can't get more into it because we have more stuff to talk about today, and we have 30 minutes left. Okay, good. Really, really quick little story there, and then we will get into the rest of this. Okay. So what comes after this story? Continue on in the same chapter. Okay, so Israel is continuing to travel up the road. They're sort of on the other side of the Jordan River. And I'm going to do this slide first. So here's the Jordan River, right? They're supposed to cross into the promised land. They're sort of traveling in the Arabian desert on this side, in the Transjordan, the other side of the Jordan. Okay? So they're traveling, and they are going to encounter these kingdoms, and they're going to need to do battle with them because those kingdoms are going to come out and attack them. What is wildly ironic about Israel's rebellion in Numbers 14, so what we read about them not wanting to go into the land because they're going to have to fight giants, is the fact they are still tasked with conquering the Anakim and the Rephaim giants of the Promised Land, whether they like it or not. So in Numbers 20 and 21, this is made clear as they go to war against the king of Arad, the king of Sihon of the Amorites, and King Og of Bashan. These three kings each have ties to or are in fact the offspring of the Nephilim giants of old from Genesis chapter 6. So let's go ahead and read that. Israel sent messengers to say to King Sihon of the Amorites, "Let us pass through your country. We will not turn aside into any field or vineyard or drink any water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway until we have passed through your territory." But Sihon would not let Israel pass through his territory. He mustered his entire army and marched out into the wilderness against Israel. When he reached Jahaz, he fought with Israel. Israel, however, put him to the sword and took over his land from Arnon to the Jabbok, but only as far as the Ammonites, because their border was fortified. Israel captured all the cities of the Amorites and occupied them, including Heshbon and its surrounding settlements. Heshbon was the city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab and taken from him all his land as far as the Anon. That is why the poets say, ... You won't have to go through this. But that's an example of that, going back to meeting one, citation, right? Where the Bible is citing its sources. That Book of the Wars of the Lord and things like that. Go back to meeting one to read that. So Israel settled in the land of the Amorites. After Moses had sent spies to Jazer, the Israelites captured its surrounding settlements and drove out the Amorites who were there. They turned and went along the road toward Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, and his whole army marched out to meet them in the battle at Edrei. Yahweh said to Moses, "Do not be afraid of him, for I have delivered him into your hands, along with his whole army and his land. Do to him what you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon." So they struck him down, together with his sons and his whole army, leaving no survivors, and they took possession of his land. Who is Og, king of Bashan? Mighty Og. You guys, I've already mentioned him today. His bed is said to be 13 feet long, right? He's a Rephaim giant. That's in the book of Deuteronomy. That's that verse that I just quoted. And what's interesting about that verse in Deuteronomy is it says you can still see his bed today in their time. Also, something interesting, modern archaeologists have found a bed frame of that exact measurements. They did not find it in Israel. They found it at the Tower of Babel in Babylon. The ruins of the Tower of Babel. So, very interesting. Can't talk about that now. But
Did you see it? That's all I want to know.
I didn't see it, but you can look it up. The bed at the ziggurat in Babylon. Anyway, so King Og of Bashan, he is one of these great giants, okay? Said to be the last of the Rephaim in the book of Deuteronomy. And why is this important? Later biblical authors, when they think back to this time, they always mention three things. They mention the greatness of God as manifest in the throwing down of Egypt in the plagues and the destruction of King Sihon and King Og. Okay? That these are these great signs to the nations that, man, Israel is taking over. What is happening? Israel's taking over. It's conquering this little people. These slaves out of Egypt are conquering these great nations. How is that happening? What is going on? Okay? So the war is against the giants. The fact is that these newcomers to the promised land, the nomads of Yahweh, are granted the power to vanquish such great and mighty kings is no laughing matter to the native Canaanites. The giant clans have enjoyed their unbridled tyranny for centuries and seeded all manner of spiritual darkness in the land. Remember, the promise to Abraham was that after 400 years, his offspring would return to the land, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Now is the time of their judgment, okay? So they're coming and they're conquering these kingdoms. And here's the deal. Because this is so scary for the kingdoms, this person named Balak, King Balak, he says, you know what? I know that now that they've conquered King Og, I'm not going to be able to stand a chance against them. Something needs to happen on a deeper level for me to have a defense against these people. So what does he do? He hires a sorcerer. and he says, come and lay a curse on this people, and then I'll be able, so fight them in the spiritual, and then I'll be able to conquer them in the physical. So the wars against the giants evolves into this moment in which King Balak of Moab hires this person named Balaam, son of Beor, or Balaam the Seer. And he says, come and pronounce like an omen, a dark omen, come pronounce a curse over the people of Israel. And then I will be able to vanquish them. Okay? Let's go ahead and read that part. So this is the next chapter, Numbers chapter 22. This is really important because this is what this moment is all leading up to. Okay? Remember what I was talking about in regard to the slaying of the giants, the taking of these kingdoms for Yahweh, the destruction of these evil empires of darkness. Now that is happening, now it's all led up to this moment in which one of the kings is like, you know what? I need to hire a witch doctor, a warlock, to come and pronounce a curse on the people, because then I'll be able to vanquish them. And what happens in this story is so foundationally important that you have to understand that most people look over the book of Numbers and they don't read this, okay? And the book of Numbers is all leading up to this moment, okay? In which this pagan warlock is brought to curse Israel because they're conquering these kingdoms. And what happens is very significant, okay? The Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab and camped along the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was terrified because there were so many people. Indeed, Moab was filled with dread because of the Israelites. The Moabites said to the elders of Midian, this horde is going to lick up everything around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field. So Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at the time, sent messengers to summon Balaam, son of Beor, who was at Pethor near the Euphrates River in his native land, in the east from where everyone is at this point. He sends messengers to this warlock living by the Euphrates River in the east, okay? So he must be pretty famous then, right? If they have to like go out of the country to go find this guy, to hire him, to contract him to come do this. A people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the land and has settled next to me. Now come and put a curse on these people because they are too powerful for me. Perhaps then I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of their land. For I know that whoever you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is cursed. The elders of Moab and Midian left, taking with them a fee for divination. When they came to Balaam, they told him what Balak said. Spend the night here, Balaam said to them, and I will report back to you with the answer that the Lord gives to me. So the Moabite officials stayed with him. Pause. So Balaam says, I'm pretty smart. I'm going to go consult their God, and I'll let you know. I'll let you know what happens, okay? God came to Balaam and asked, who are these men with you? Balaam said to God, Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent me a message. A people has come out of Egypt. It covers the face of the land. Now come and put a curse on them. Perhaps then I will be able to fight them and drive them away. But God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people because they are blessed. The next morning, Balaam got up and said to Balak's officials, go back to your country, for Yahweh has refused to let me go with you. So the Moabite officials returned to Balak and said, Balaam refused to come with us. Then Balak sent other officials, more numerous and more distinguished than the first. So you can imagine this is taking place over a long period of time. They came to Balaam and said, this is what Balak, son of Zippor, says. Do not let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. Come and put a curse on these people for me. But Balaam answered them, even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of Yahweh my God. Now spend the night here so that I may find out what else the Lord will tell me. Now that night God came to Balaam and said, since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you. I'm going to have to skip. So I'm going to have to skip the next part. I'm sorry. We have to jump forward because there's an aside. But basically what's going to happen in the story, Balaam is going to be riding out and he's going to be threatened by God, genuinely threatened, and say, like, God is like, I will slay you if you do anything other than what I tell you. Okay? I will kill you right there unless you do anything that anything other than I tell you. So then he's going to go and pronounce these curses over Israel, okay? So what they're going to do is King Balak is going to take Balaam up to a mountain overlooking the people of Israel in the Jordan, or in the Transjordan area. the Jordan Valley. He's going to take him onto a mountain, and they're going to make a couple sacrifices to the gods, to the gods of that mountain, theoretically. And then he's going to say, all right, pronounce a curse. By the power of these gods, pronounce a curse. Okay? What's going to come out of the mouth of Balaam?
A blessing.
Blessings. Okay? What the blessings are is very significant. Okay, so they go to a mountain, and Balaam says, build me 7 altars here and prepare 7 bulls and rams for me. Balak did as Balaam did, as Balaam said. The 2 of them offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, stay here beside your offering while I go aside. Perhaps Yahweh will come to meet with me. Whatever he reveals to me, I will tell you. Then he went off to a barren height. God met with him, and Balaam said, I have prepared 7 altars, and on each altar I have offered a bull and a ram. So let me reiterate what I was saying. In Balak's perspective, they're not offering to Yahweh God per se. But Balaam, who's smart, he's not good, by the way. He's a villain. And I'll explain more of that. He's not a good guy. He's a villain, but he's smart. And he knows how the spiritual world works. And so he's interacting with the God of Israel. The Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, go back to Balak and give him this word. So he went back to him and found him standing beside his offering with all the Moabite officials. Then Balaam spoke his message. Before I give it to you, I'm going to go back to the slides for a second. So Balaam, famous pagan warlock of the ancient world, sorcerer from Mesopotamia in the east. He's an astrologer, a spellcaster. He's the giver of a very significant prophecy that we're about to read. He's the enemy of Israel. Ultimately, he's going to, because all he can do is give blessings spiritually, what he's going to do is he's going to say to the king of Moab and the Midianites, he's going to say, you know, I'm pretty smart. If you just send a bunch of prostitutes into their camp, you can get them to basically sacrifice to other gods through these cult prostitutes, and then you'll be good. Because their God is not going to, bless them anymore. And then I don't need to pronounce a curse. Just sabotage them morally, and it'll work out for you. And that's what happens. So we're not going to get into that just yet. But first, he's got to give these prophecies. Okay. I say that he's a famous pagan warlock because, again, they send these messengers into another country to find him. Okay. So they're like, we need to hire the big guns, right? We need to get someone who's important, who knows his stuff. Also, he is probably the earliest biblical figure who is mentioned in other extraneous writings. So this is called the Deir Allah inscription, a text in Jordan that records the prophecies of Balaam, son of Beor, the seer. So you can read prophecies from this person that are not in the Bible. Okay, really interesting. Pagan prophecies talking about all these different gods and stuff like that. So just something to think about, that Balaam is mentioned in other writings. So take that for what you will. This story of Balaam and the seer, or Balaam the seer and the star prophecy, is incredibly significant. Not only is it exciting storytelling, but it gives one of the most important messianic prophecies found in the entire Torah. Okay? So we're going to read that now. Okay? So this is the first message that is given from Balaam to Balak. He says, Balak brought me from Aram, the king of Moab, from the eastern mountains. Come, he said, curse Jacob for me and denounce Israel. How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom Yahweh has not denounced? From the rocky peaks I see them, from the heights I view them. I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number even a fourth of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my final end be like theirs. So he doesn't give any blessing, or excuse me, he doesn't give any curse. All he says is, I cannot curse whom God has not cursed. Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I brought you to curse my enemies, but you have done nothing but bless them. He answered, must I not speak what Yahweh puts in my mouth? So Balak, being a dummy, remember Balaam's smart, Balak's a dummy, he says, let's go to this mountain over here and appeal on the gods over there, okay? And then maybe they'll give you a word of curse, okay? Let's do another offering over here. And if you watched the video, these mountains are right next to each other, right? It's like a mountain, and then like a valley, and then a mountain, and then a valley, and then a mountain. So 3 mountains anyway. And then you can actually see where Israel would have been camped out right there in the valley, okay? Okay, so then Balak said to him, "Come with me to another place where you can see them. You will not see all of them, but the outskirts of their camp, and from there curse them for me." So he took them to the field of Zophim on the top of Pisgah, and there he built 7 altars and offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Balaam said to Balak, "Stay here beside your offering while I meet with him over there." Yahweh said to Balaam, and put a word in his mouth. And he said, "Go back to Balak and give him this word." So he went to him and found him standing beside his offering with the Moabite officials. Balak asked him, "What did the Lord say?" And he spoke his message. Okay, here's another one. "Arise, Balak, and listen. Hear me, son of Zippor. God is not a human that he should lie, nor a human being that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? I have received a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot change it. No misfortune is seen in Jacob. No misery is observed in Israel. Yahweh their God is with them. The shout of the king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. They have strength of a wild ox. There is no divination against Jacob, no evil omens against Israel. It will now be said of Jacob and of Israel, see what God has done. The people rise like a lioness. They rouse themselves like a lion that does not rest until it devours its prey and drinks the blood of its victims." Pause. So the Lord their God is with them. The shout of their king is among them. So their king is who? Who's their king? God. Okay. The Lord their God is with them. The shout of their king is among them. Their king is God. Okay. Just take note of that. Then Balak said to Balaam, "Neither curse them at all or bless them at all. Stop talking." Balaam answered, "Did I not tell you that I must do whatever the Lord says?" Then Balak is a dummy. He says, "Come, let me take you to another place. Perhaps then it will please God to let you curse them from me from there." Balak took Balaam to the top of Beor, overlooking the wasteland. Balaam said, "Build me 7 altars here and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me." Balak did just as Balaam said. They offered a bull and a ram on each altar. You can see how this is a repetitive, moment, right? Where we're going to keep sacrificing on each of these mountains, and then I want to give you a word from the Lord. Okay? Here we go. Now they're on the 3rd mountain, Beor. Okay? When Balaam saw that it pleased Yahweh to bless Israel, he did not resort to divination as at the other times, but he turned his face towards the wilderness. When Balaam looked out and saw Israel encamped tribe by tribe, the Spirit of God came in on him and he spoke this message. So pause. Every time that it said, "Let me go over here and do my thing," right? Theoretically, he was performing some sort of pagan ritual to evoke the blessing, right? Now he doesn't even need that. Now it says the Spirit of the Lord rushes on him and he just starts speaking prophetically. Okay? Here we go. So it's like intensifying. These messages are intensifying. They're growing in their status. They're growing in their importance. Okay? So remember, the first one was just like, look, Israel's great. Israel's blessed. I can't curse if Yahweh has not cursed. The second one is Yahweh is their king, and they're going to devour the nations as a lion devours its prey. And Yahweh is their king. Now here's his 3rd message on the 3rd mountain. And it's a really, really important one. The Spirit of the Lord rushes on him and he starts speaking a prophecy. Okay, here we go. Now, he called them, they were like oracles or messages before, like little sayings, right? Of like observations of Balaam. But now it's called a prophecy. Now it's called a prophecy. Okay, here we go. This is really cool. I got to tell you, I love reading these because it's just really epic. Okay, it's really epic. Okay. The prophecy of Balaam, son of Beor. The prophecy of one whose eye sees clearly. The prophecy of one who hears the words of God, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate, and whose eyes are opened. How significant is that? So the vision, he falls down prostrate means he bows low to the ground, and it's like you can imagine he looks up and he sees God with his eyes wide open. And that's a very significant, seeing God or seeing a vision from God. He says, "How beautiful are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. Like valleys they spread out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by Yahweh, like cedars beside the waters. Water flows from their buckets. Their seed will have abundant water." Garden of Eden, anyone? Okay. They're like the Garden of Eden. Their king will be higher then Agag, their kingdom will be exalted. Pause. Agag is the king of the Amalekites. Okay, so one of these nations. Their king, who is their king? God is their king. Their king will be greater than Agag. God brought them out of Egypt. They have strength of a wild ox. They devour hostile nations. They break the bones into pieces. With their arrows, they pierce them. Like a lion, they crouch down and lie down. Like a lioness, who dares to rouse them up? May those who bless you be blessed, and those who curse you be cursed. Then Balak's anger burned against Balaam. He struck his hands together and said to him, I summoned you to curse my enemies, but you have blessed them these 3 times, and now leave at once and go home. I said I would reward you handsomely, but the Lord has kept you from being rewarded. Balaam said to Balak, did I not tell the messengers you sent me? Even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything of my own accord, good or bad, to go beyond the command of Yahweh. And I must say only what Yahweh says. Now I'm going back to my people, but come, let me warn you of what the people will do to your people in the days to come. Then he spoke his message. The prophecy of Balaam, son of Beor, the prophecy of one whose eye sees clearly, the prophecy of one who hears the words of God, who has knowledge from the Most High, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate and whose eyes are open. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab, the skulls of the people of Sheth. Edom will be conquered. Seer, his enemy, will be conquered, but Israel will grow strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city. Okay. It's really important, guys. Okay. It's really important. Okay, so let's take a step back. Who is Balaam? A seer. A seer. A seer means like a shaman, a pagan person who can cast spells. Okay. Where does he come from? The east.
Outside, like.
Okay.
me.
What? Like what? Like what?
I like the kings.
Okay, yes. We 3 kings. Okay, you're jumping ahead. Great. That's where we're going. Okay. Good. Okay. And he gives these messages about Israel and its king, which are going to conquer the nations. Okay? Who is the king of Israel? Yahweh God is the king of Israel, as he said in his second message. In his 4th message, he says a king is coming out of Israel. So a star will come out of Jacob. A scepter, the image of the scepter, is that which comes out of Israel. A king, God is the king of Israel, but a scepter is coming out of Israel. A ruler is coming out of Jacob to destroy the survivors of the city, to conquer the nations. Okay? So is Yahweh the Most High God their king, or is one coming out of Israel their king?
Yes.
Okay. So he sees a star, which, remember, stars represent gods. He sees a star and he sees a scepter. Okay, a human king holding a scepter who is also a star. And what is that star going to do? That star is going to be the conqueror of nations. And he's mentioning the nations that are around them at this time. He will crush the skulls of the people of Sheth. Edom will be conquered. Seer, his enemy, will be conquered. Israel will grow strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city. Okay? This is the first, most clear message in the Torah of a king that is coming out of the people of Israel, who will conquer the world, who is Yahweh God. Yahweh is their king, but there is a king to come. Yahweh is the one who conquers the nations, but the king who is to come out of Jacob is to conquer the nations. They're one and the same. You see how important that is? So let me go back.
It's interesting too that prophecy was like about the people of Israel, not the land of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot to be said there. We don't need to get into that yet. In these passages, there's so much here to make for a very memorable story. Anakim giants, a dark wizard, a messenger of Yahweh appearing, a key messianic prophecy and the grand finale of Israel's worship of pagan god at Beor. We haven't gotten to that yet, but let me just sort of outline this for you. In this story, the Most High God exercises domination over all blessing and curses in a grand display to the nations. Yahweh here very loudly and publicly delivers the news via the mouth of a pagan that the king over the whole world is going to come from Israel, and he will bring the judgment of the Creator, the Most High God, onto those nations. Okay? So the first time in the Bible that you have a moment in which it's like a king is coming, he's going to come, he's going to render judgment upon the nations. The king of Israel, who is Yahweh, is coming to do that. And it's via Balaam, a pagan sorcerer. So here are the most significant parts. The Lion of Judah, right? He lays down like a lion, like a lioness who can rouse them up. Yahweh is with them, their king, and a star will rise. The king higher than Agag, a scepter shall rise. This really harkens to Jacob's prophecy all the way back in Genesis 49. Doesn't know it. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouches down. He stretches out like a lion, like a lioness. Who dares rouse him? Isn't that exactly what Balaam just said? The scepter, which comes out of Jacob, per what Balaam just said, shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and the obedience of the nations, the peoples, is his. Binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washes his garments in wine, and his robe is in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. We talked about the Lion of Judah, how lions represent kings, right? So this prophecy of Balaam, son of Beor, it's a famous prophecy of seeing what is to come. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come, a scepter will rise in the future, and it will destroy the nations. Okay? It will conquer the nations. It will destroy the survivors. Now, does a star, where else does a star and the Messiah story connect? Jesus' birth, in which pagan astrologers from the east, recognizing this prophecy, they come and they bear witness to the king of Israel.
That's the prophecy they were referring to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why in one of the videos it said that the story of the one who is to come out of Bethlehem, the one will come out of Bethlehem whose origin is from everlasting, it says in Micah. There's an ancient tradition to read that passage from Micah right next to this story in Numbers about the prophecy of Balaam. Okay? And that is why the Magi, the astrologers, come from the east. They come to Bethlehem to bear witness to the King of the Jews who is to conquer the world. Okay? Pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff, right, guys? We have no time to get into it, but essentially what happens here is Balaam, he essentially says, yeah, I can't spiritually succeed in this way. All you have to do is just send your cult prostitutes into their camps, try to get them to buy things from them. They'll start sleeping around. They'll start sacrificing to the pagan gods. And then they'll be morally compromised and God will plague them and you'll be good. And then they basically kill Balaam and Moses is all mad and stuff. So that's how the story ends. You can go read it, okay, in the next chapters. But what you have to know, what's so significant about this is this element, okay? Is the element that God is, that the nations are so threatened, these nations ruled by giants are so threatened that Israel is conquering them, that they hire this pagan sorcerer to come, this sort of dark wizard, to come and pronounce a curse over them. All he gives are blessings, but it's not just any blessings. He gives a vital prophecy about the coming king, who is Jesus, Yahweh incarnate. And then the follow-up of that is pagan astrologers coming from the east and paying homage and bowing down before that king. How all of this stuff in Numbers is followed up on in Matthew chapter 1 and 2, okay? It's really amazing how that works. How it's followed up in the prophets. Again, how the prophet Micah, he says, a ruler is coming out of Israel, coming out of Bethlehem, whose origin is from everlasting. The king of Israel is Yahweh. The one who's born in Bethlehem is God. is our God, is the one who eternally exists. And again, the star that rises up out of Jacob, per Balaam's prophecy, is Yahweh God. God is their king, but their king is also to come. Okay? So we're in the Torah. We're at the end of the Torah, but we've got a definitive prophecy about the king who's to come. From the line of Judah, from Jacob. It's in the first 5 books of the Bible, guys. We're waiting on Jesus. Okay? That's what the rest of the Bible is waiting on, is the coming king who's going to conquer the nations. Now remember, Jesus' sword is his mouth. So all this conqueringness, right? It is this conquering that comes through the sword, right? Of his mouth, of his word. Also, he's called the Lion of Judah, right? Lion, this conquering lion. But then John in Revelation turns and sees a lamb, a slain lamb. So the king, who is the lion, is also the Passover lamb that redeemed them from Egypt. See how the Holy Spirit is a DJ. He loves remixing things, okay? That's all I gotta say. That's what the Bible is, okay? That's how cool it is. So that's why this story is so important, because it's giving you a prophecy like about Jesus in a very clear way. A king is to come who will conquer the nations. Be warned, you nations, the king is coming from Israel. The king is their God, Yahweh. He's coming. Anyway.
It's so neat how prophecy foresees.
Right. Yeah, he says, I see him, I can behold him, but I know he's not here yet. He's coming. Yeah. Pretty cool.
The kings that are coming from the east, and they see the star. Is that?
Yeah.
Came for the star.
Right.
Jesus telling them.
Right. So the star that there's a lot going into that, into the star, a lot of astrological signs and things like that. But yes, the idea is conceivably they know. Remember, Balaam is this famous figure of the ancient past who has this famous prophecy of the ancient past about the king of Israel, and so they know about that. Right. That's the sense. Is these are very studied people in the East, in Persia, where they would have been, that they know what's going on. And they know that, like, when we see certain things in the sky, like, we know what's going on. It's that prophecy of Balaam is coming to fruition, you know? So we got to go and find out where the king of the Jews is to be born, because this is the one. This is the one who's going to conquer the nations. Does that make sense? Pretty cool. And he conquers them all without raising a literal steel sword, right? He conquers them all by the word. Pretty cool, huh? Anyway, any other thoughts? Yeah.
In Numbers 22:18, it says, but Balaam answered them, even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in this palace, I cannot do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord my God.
Yeah. Conceivably, he was a syncretist, meaning he had a lot of different gods. Yeah. So that's the idea. Is the way that Balaam is presented in the story is as a person for hire, right? So he's going to do whatever the person with the biggest bucks is going to tell him to do, essentially. And so that's why he's willing to, again, like God, he's a contractor. You know what I mean? So that's essentially what is going on here.
To me too, if he's a seer, then he knows who the most powerful God is.
Yeah. Right.
So he's not going to defy.
Right. Yeah. Well, he knows who has the most power. Yeah. And so, but he's not faithful, right? Again, he's presented throughout the Bible. He's referred to multiple times by the apostles as like, don't be like Balaam, who like knows the right stuff, but doesn't actually live in the right stuff, So, yeah. Who's just after the money, who's just after the fame, right? So, yeah. And he suffers the consequences for it. So he's sort of that marginal figure that sort of stands on the outside and like knows what's going on. Again, he's smart, but he's just sort of going to do whatever he can because he does want to get his reward in the end, right? Because he's like, oh, I can't pronounce any curses, but let me tell you how you're going to defeat them. Now you can reward me, So, all right, guys. Well, that's Numbers. That's the book of Numbers. When you think of the book of Numbers, don't think of numbers. Don't think of just census data. Think of this amazing story of the snake in the wilderness, and think of the amazing story of the giants, and think of the fact that we get an amazing prophecy about Jesus right there in the book of Numbers. Okay?
First part of Numbers is them lining up the, in the center, and then they tie up the tribes.
Right.
That's like the first half of Numbers.
Yeah, that's right.
All Numbers.
Yeah, it is Numbers. Yeah, at the beginning. Next time, guys, we have one more week in the Torah. We're going to do 1 week just reading some chapters from Deuteronomy. I'm not going to need to do a ton of explaining because, I mean, we will do some explaining, but Deuteronomy is like a reflection on everything. Okay? Deuteronomy sums up the Torah in like a really, really long reflective, like it's not story, like this, then this, then this. It's not like a plot. It's like Moses is like giving a speech to the people, essentially. That's what the book of Deuteronomy is, to kind of sum up what has happened and give a prophecy of what's going to happen in the story of the Bible. So that's what we got next week. And then we got the book of Joshua.
One question.
Yeah.
About Balaam's prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
He mentioned Agag.
Mm-hmm.
Was Agag, I'm my timeline's getting mixed up. Was Agag already king of the Amalek?
Well, okay, so theoretically, Agag is a term for the king of the Amalekites. Yeah. And not just it's like more of a title. Yeah. Because that Agag that you're thinking of is like hundreds of years later.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, is he prophesying
About the future?
Amalekites, or is it a title?
Yeah, I think it's more of a title is the way of thinking about it. Yeah.
But he doesn't say the Agag, he says Agag.
Yeah, Pharaoh.
That's true.
Yeah. The Pharaoh. Sometimes it says the Pharaoh, then it just says I don't know. It's I don't know. We could probably look into it. But I mean, think about how interesting that is that Saul
He could prophesy that.
Yeah.
I mean,
He could.
Could it also be about David in a sense also?
because Saul does not slay Agag, right? So he's rejected as king because he doesn't slay Agag. That's a really cool thought. Yeah, maybe. That's book of. Hey, who's watching House of David? You guys watching House of David? Season 2?
Oh, gotta watch it.
Season 2 came out. Yeah.
Amazon.
Amazon. The whole first episode is like 40 minutes of a battle sequence. It's like Lord of the Rings. It's amazing.
Season 1 though, that was season 2.
Yeah, season 2. Gotta watch season 1 first. Yeah. That was the one with Agag.
Is
Yeah.
it true? I mean, true to.
It's pretty consistent. I mean, it takes some liberties, but it's pretty.
Hell, they'll say at the beginning that it's.
Yeah.
They have to, yeah, but it's pretty good.
They're fairly consistent. I mean, they're adding little things here and there, but it's not like a huge deal. Yeah. They it's an adaptation. Yeah. So.
I never read or watched Lord of the Rings or any of those.
Oh, okay. It's sticking to the plot of the Bible, so that's for sure. And it's awesome. So, okay, guys. How's everyone feeling? Good? All right. Next time we finish the Torah. Thank you, everyone.